Hello and welcome everybody, I'm a Proper Variant and this is number 78 of the CK3 Dev Diaries. This one is coming out a bit later. I'm sitting in the dark as you can see, and that is because I was thinking about this one for quite a bit. I have several issues with this Dev Diary. You're gonna see it when I talk about it. Now before we do any of this, let me just say there is no release date in this Dev Diary. If you came here for this, then my apologies, that isn't happening. The way I see it is we will either very soon, see a release date announced for November, or, they will take this sweet time and then we will see it for January. I don't think December is very viable and is very likely, because in December, hey, everybody is moving, everybody is already leaving sort of for Christmas and for New Year's Eve holidays, and if you release something, especially a patch and a content expansion this big for a grand strategy game in December, then how are you going to fix its issues in the immediate bug reports? Listen, you will always, as somebody that has played this game for ages now, you will always have big bugs in these games, especially right after release, so having a team ready that can actually fix them is very incremental, or rather very important here for this sort of purpose. And I don't think for this very reason that December is very likely, because you're looking at a situation where most of the team will be gone. Now, with that being said, I don't really care about the release date personally. Hey, you can care. I think that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. But I will say that personally, this obviously has been a difficult birth for them. This is a lot of new territory. They have a huge team expansion. They addressed this as well. No, I'm not happy with content taking this long, but I will say it is what it is at this point, and I'm more looking out that the future expansions won't take nearly as long, because at that point we should be concerned. If you get like one big expansion for CK3 per year, then yeah, that could spell trouble. Now, as it stands, though, it sort of is what it is. I hope you know where I'm coming from. So I personally am not upset, just wanted to say that. Now let's jump into the actual Dev Diary. Taking language to code. This is about code languages, very interesting topic in theory. We already talked about languages, of course, for characters and whatnot in the previous Dev Diary. We talked about this, and I wasn't too happy with the Dev Diary there. Rather, I'm very interested and very happy with the mechanic making it into the game, but with the actual implementation, I personally think that since it is rather appears to be limited, we ultimately don't know really whether that is truly everything a mechanic has to offer, but I generally assume that it is. And what last week's Dev Diary had was effectively a bit of an issue for me, because it was looking at many modifiers and very few actual mechanic changing ideas. I proposed a couple of mechanic changing ideas in the last week's Dev Diary. I hope that you're going to check that out. I thought those were some pretty decent ideas. Code languages, I will say, has a pretty similar feeling to me. It doesn't feel nearly as interconnected to the rest of the CK3 mechanics as the rest of the CK3 mechanics, and I will be the first one to really laud CK3 mechanics being interconnected, but in this one, not so much. Now, this one was written by Mrop, who is an user experience designer. Thank you so much for writing the Dev Diary as per usual. Now, let's jump into this. Code languages can, of course, be different from the languages of the peasants. I mean, pretty easy to understand. I think Louis XIV spoke French, and his beautiful grand royal court made it so that, in Russia and Prussia and Bavaria and Austria and Italy, everybody spoke beautiful French. And that is why today I also speak French as my third language. We have, for example, Richard the Lionheart, who was the King of England, of course, but spoke Occitan. He preferred Occitan. All of his poetry is written in Occitan because that is the language that he loved. English in itself very rarely got attention from the early English kings. This was primarily, of course, towards French, towards Occitan. That is where they were situated, including the Normans. Very interesting concept. Now let's take a look at how it is implemented. Each ruler with a royal court has a language chosen as their court language. At the start of the game, this is determined by what historically was used. If you get a royal court later, its court language will simply be your native language. You can, of course, choose to change it. Each language you can pick as your court language changes the court grandeur baseline. You may recall that grandeur in this baseline was explained in Dev Diary 61. As a refresher, your court grandeur measures how impressive your royal court is. Each month, it moves slowly towards the baseline value. Changing your court language will therefore take time to actually have an effect on your court's grandeur. So, this is High German, and you will see later that this is the court of East Francia. I know this for a fact because this is court grandeur 36. You're gonna see that in a second. Don't worry about it too much. What can we see right here? 36 is right here. This is our current court grandeur. This is this, okay? We can go up to 100. It has a scale of 0 to 100, and we have reached level 4. I'm not sure what this means. Maybe this just denotes our current level. But I would assume that this already denotes our current level. Maybe this is where we need to be. Maybe it means we can hold court. Honestly, I don't know. Don't worry about it too much right now. This is the court base level. meaning that this is where we can go. Meaning we're currently right here, and every month it will increase until we reach this level, which is about like 42 or something like that anyway. I would assume. I think this is like 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. Yeah, that makes perfect sense actually. Literally what I was talking about. So this is like 42, right? So far, so good. What is interesting to me, right from the get-go, is we speak High German, as you can see right here. This is our code language. We have very modest investments in our code amenities. 2.16 per month is really not that much. Outmoded fashion, modest food, some servants, and small lodgings. What is confusing to me, and I will just say that, what is very confusing to me is that we barely invest anything into code amenities. Not just is it very low here in the numbers, but it's also low in these actual categories. And yet, we reach 42. 42 out of 100 in 867. I want to push that out there. I don't know the actual math behind this. I don't know how it is influenced by the longevity of a realm. But what concerns me already in the screenshot, and this is day-to-day politics, I do want to point this out. This can be fixed with just a couple of number tweaks, at least theoretically. I do want to bring that up. But usually I don't get hung up on these day-to-day politics numbers. But today I want to be hung up on them because if in 867 we already reached level 5, which is half of the total level that is possible in a court like East Francia, that's insane. That's insane because at the same time we had courts like the Byzantine Empire, courts like the Abbasids, courts like the Umayyads that were truly known and truly revered for the wealth, the prosperity, and the art that they displayed in their courts. Where are they? Are they in 867 up here already? I was thinking, personally at the very least, you know, after I saw this dev diary and this concept, that maybe, you know, like as you progress through time and you generally get wealthier, because there is also this thing that isn't tackled by CK3 at all, which is the commercial revolution. People just got wealthier after around 900 to 1200, because that is when this big sort of endeavor took off. Basically, that's when it happened, and wealth hugely increased, especially in Europe itself. And yet we can already reach level 5. That's honestly, to me, it just doesn't feel right. And it doesn't feel right in particular because this is just, it costs 2.16 bucks, and we're looking at very, very little, like, small levels. And yet we're here. We do know that we gain about, well, 11 point something or something, I think, in code grinder just from the language. But let's get to that in a second. In general, I will say this inventory, or rather this UI, that's what I mean, looks good. This UI to me personally looks quite good looking at it. I also like that we're ranked in the world. I think that is a huge thing where you can look around and basically be envious of people. Now, code language influences next to the amenities our code grinder base apparently a lot. This is an interesting point, a very important point. Let's keep that in mind. Let's talk about how code language works. The royal court with the highest code grinder is considered the leader of that language and gains code grinder based on how many royal courts speak that language. So, if you are the leader of a language, you want as many courts as possible to adopt it. Naturally, you only gain this grander if you can actually speak the language. On the other hand, if you are not the grandest court of the language, you gain code grander based on the difference of your grander and the grander of the leading court. Speaking the code language is not required for this bonus, so even if your neighbors have a language you cannot speak, you can attempt to impress them by following their lead. Oh, okay, so this is that's already a difficult one. Let's skip through this though. In addition to this pecking order, you also gain code grander for each county in your realm that speaks your code language, but only if you know the language personally. Finally, if your code language is also your native language, you gain an extra 25% bonus to all the impacts your code language has on your code grander. Code grinder baseline. So this is for this right here, 11.12. We're looking at Ludwig the German. That's us. We're looking at this. This is our number that we gain from having High German as our code language. This is important. We are the grandest court. And 11.12 is the number that we gain. Realm counties with High German language plus 6.9. I'm pretty sure that this equals 0.1 per county. Meaning you gain 0.1 grander per county that speaks your language. Meaning, big languages and big cultures get a huge, huge benefit here. A huge benefit. Listen, if you rule in Sicily, you have like, what, 20 provinces at most that speak Sicilian? If you're the Holy Roman Empire and High German is your code language, you gain a huge boost. The Abbasids, for example, yeah? If they were, or the Mongols. No, honestly, anybody that conquers a lot and has a big realm from conquering. Anybody that doesn't have a gigantic core culture will get basically shafted here. This is a big bonus. 6.9. It's a big bonus. What are you going to say about it, right? If you're a small culture, if you're Brittany, you will barely gain any court grandeur baseline just from speaking Breton. Meaning the rest needs to come from investments from other cultures, from maybe just, you know, joining France in their court language. Anyway, grandest high German court language gives you +2. I assume maybe per court that speaks it, you gain +1, right? So, honestly, not that significant. And then you can natively speak High German. Now, where's my issue here? I want you for a second to imagine that I am the king of all Finland. And I just converted from being tribal to feudal. My court is in the gutters. Everybody hates me. Everybody's like, hey, your court sucks, buddy. I hate you. Now I look around and I see Greek, see Arabic. And they have court grandeur of, let's say, 100. Okay? Listen, if East France here, with not much effort, can reach 42, 100 can't be that difficult, right? So I look at them and I say, I would like to speak Greek. What's the consequence here? Yes. You know, scrolling down, it seems as though Greece, or rather the Byzantine Empire, gets +1 for me speaking the language. And I get what? +40? +50? Plus anything? I don't know where we are here, right? But that's a massive increase, no matter how we look at this. I mean, even look at this, right? We were talking in my example about Finland being at court grandeur 0. Italy's at 23. And still they get they get 5.2 from having German as the language. Italy doesn't have any German-speaking provinces. Why are they getting so much? Because of this. As they said earlier, you don't even need to speak the language. If you just adopt it, you get more court grandeur. And you get court grandeur based and scaling by how much the court leader, so the grandeur leader, which is Germany, or East France in this case, has. Meaning the lower your court grandeur, the less you're investing, the more you're getting out of Germany. If you were to speak this language right here. I have to assume the Byzantines can invest a lot. They're an empire as well, so maybe they even need to invest more. I don't know how it works, right? But my worry, my gigantic worry here is, why would you ever pick your own language? Why would you do it? Why would you not just look around and shop for the most impact that you can get for your court grandeur bonus? Now you might say, hey, okay, maybe that seems this way on first glance, but what if in reality there's like side effects? I don't know, maybe there's cultural divergence, maybe you need to pick up cultural traditions from the court language that you're speaking for your own culture, maybe your kids forget your own native culture. No, none of that is a thing. You can see right here, pretty good screen. This is the culture screen. You can see the what the traditions are, what the pillars are, and so on from French culture, and you can adopt their language right here as your code language. I think this is a nice screen. I think this makes a lot of sense. This is a nice screen. Right here, we have one of the very few examples of what can happen if you have a code language and the other person doesn't speak it. So this is, I wait patiently on my throne for the arrival of Count Aude, who is soon announced and ushered before me. I believe they rule in Switzerland, and this is, of course, the Holy Roman Empire. He kneels in deference, or deference? Honestly, I don't even... Oh, this is Besançon, actually. Huh. As a vassal of the empire. Wait, we are in France. Are you seeing this? Yeah, look at this. France is actually under control. These are the Suvdenites, though. Wait, oh my god. Who are we in this? I just took the time, actually looked it up. So this is a Holy Roman Empire in 867, founded by the King of Lotharingia. That is what we're looking at here, okay? That is where we're coming from. Anyway, this is one of the very few events that, as far as we know, maybe there's much more, maybe there are more interactions, but I always feel that if they had them, they would mention them. My concern about code languages is that there's no impact on how the peasantry feels about it, on how foreign people feel about it, except for this. Listen, we know court grandeur will make it so that people respect you more. That is what happens. I assume opinion, maybe something else, who knows. But the more court grandeur you have, the better it is. Where is the conversation about it being negative, or at least being viewed negatively, if you from, a culture that is different, that doesn't have anything to do, maybe that has very little cultural acceptance with a culture whose language you're picking up, why is there no conversation about the idea of your culture, about your vassals, about your peasants not feeling happy with the idea that you picked up their language just to gain court grandeur. I am a big enemy of this. I'm not a big fan of this. Listen, I think court language is a great idea. I like the idea a lot. I like language as an idea. But this ultimately, the way it looks to me, and you can see the spread right here, people will basically always go for more glamorous languages, right? This is an effective and interesting tool to show the cultural imperialism that without a doubt happened in the medieval period, that happened without a doubt in the absolutist period right after. No doubt about it, okay? But what I am concerned about is the fact that you only have one choice, and that's the right choice or the wrong choice. That's the choice to say, do I want more grandeur or do I not want more grandeur? Now, if you adopt Greece or Greek and at some point come close to Greek and their own grandeur, you might want to break away. But you're getting this big grandeur boost in all other cases. If you are, I don't know, you're right here and you adopt Greek, why wouldn't you? Greek surely is higher than Iranian. Right? That's where I'm coming from. This is concerning to me because there's only one right choice, and that choice is to pick whoever is the most grandeur. If you come up with enough grandeur because you invest the money into your amenities, okay, that's fine. But in all other circumstances, you will be looking at so much damn grandeur. And on top of that, again, it is hugely beneficial to be from a big culture. Why is it hugely beneficial to be from a big culture? We're looking at a situation where, ultimately, if you're from, hell, I don't know, you're from Wales. Okay? You're from Wales, and you have the grandest court. People will fundamentally think your court is worse than High German, than the German court, because there's so many more counties that speak German. Let me just remind you of this, right? Just so that you know what I'm talking about. You can see it right here. This is because we have this many counties in our realm that speak High German. I assume 69. Who knows, right? Obviously, Welsh, how many counties does Wales have? It's like 12 maybe, right? That's the maximum that you can get. And I don't think that's right. You could have this illustrious court there. You could have this illustrious court in Brittany, and people fundamentally would disrespect you. And I have to tell you, that's a bit weird. You could speak, in Brittany, you could speak Czech-Slovak, which apparently is the historical predecessor to Czech and Slovak. But either way, where I'm coming from is you could speak Czech-Slovak over here and it would greatly benefit you. To the same degree that Brittany would basically benefit you. I think this is a great idea. I think the spread that you can see right here, you can see Greek and Arabic, you can see French, you can see Magadan. This is all nice. One of the biggest issues that I still maintain I have, and that without a doubt, at least in my opinion, are maintained in this, is the issue of this, introducing a mechanic that you either make the right choice in or the wrong choice, and I think this is fundamentally a bad design choice for CK3, and B, it makes it so that the richer get richer, okay? If you are already of a big culture, if you are already in a position of power, you will be the one that spreads their language. Just look at this. Again, this starts in 867. You can see how the Iberian Peninsula, you can see Iberian and then Arabic, gets eaten by Arabic. Why? Well, maybe because Iberian is really bad for your court grandeur. There is no grand Iberian court. So they go up and they eat you in full. Because Arabic gives you this permanent influx of grandeur. Surely the Abbasids, surely the Umayyads will have a lot of grandeur to go around. Surely in Greece, again, hey, the Byzantine Empire never falls in this game, at least as it stands. They will be in a position where they can simply say, hey, we're gonna invest a lot into our court and everybody else better take it in as well. I really, really like, seriously, I love this idea of cultural dominance, of supremacy. I love Dutch right there, standing its own ground, basically a Dutch king in whatever empire this might be, saying, no, I don't care, I live where I live and I rule where I rule, and that is really, really cool. I love, the Iranian, and then within it is probably Shah's Turkic. Oh no, that's actually Iranian right here, and then Arabic is the general thing, but I also think that there are so many downsides to this concept of basically saying we are making the strong stronger, and we're making it so that there's no downside to not speaking the language of a court that you're adopting the language from, making it so that you can leech off of them in your court grandeur and you don't even need to speak it. Again, just think of this idea: if the King of Finland adopts Greek in 867, why wouldn't he? Why the hell wouldn't he? There doesn't seem to be a negative modifier, there don't seem to be any specific decisions. Honestly, it frustrates me. Listen, To bring this to an end, because I want to take you here, or want to keep you here for too long. Languages and code languages should give you bonuses. They should make life easier in many, many ways. But I also think that there should be more decisions, more interactions, more general influences that you can have. You know, if you come into a country and you speak their language, they should respect you. If you make their language code language, they should love you for elevating them, for saying we are one of these people, you know? It was a huge controversy, for example, of course, in Hungary in 1066, and even before that, actually, when I believe it was Peter Aber. No, actually, it was Peter Haber's father, but I can't remember his name. But where I'm coming from is, he fought against Peter the Venetian, and Peter the Venetian was also an Arpad family member. So he basically was born to an Italian mother and to an Arpad, or the other way. Honestly, I think a Hungarian mother and an Italian father. It doesn't really matter. He became the king of Hungary. And he introduced, you know, the code language, Latin. He introduced Latin priests and whatnot, and people hated it because that went against the tradition of their people, of the vassals, of the peasantries, and so on. None of this seems to have a big effect. We haven't heard anything negative about you having a code language that you don't speak and a code language that, you know, your vassals don't share. You ultimately just enter a realm where you make more code grandeur. And I think this fundamentally is bad. I think this fundamentally should be altered. That's where I'm coming from. I hope you get it. If you disagree and get it, that's also good. Don't worry here, yeah. No judgment there. Ultimately, I just want to say I love the language mechanic ideas that we have in CK3. I don't love the implementation that we have seen so far. I think modifiers are good, but shouldn't be the maximum that you get out of any given mechanic. Getting, you know, the ability to write specific poems, getting the ability to influence other realms and their language. It very much sounds as though they choose it at random. So basically, if there's a neighbor that has a lot of grandeur, they have a chance to choose it, right? And you could influence them. If it was easier, for example, if somebody shared your code language to also convert them to your faith, how cool would that be? Right now, we can't even convert the Norse or the Russians. None of that is viable, especially in an 867 campaign. If we could do that by taking influence via their language, how cool would that be? It doesn't seem like it's in. I wanted to bring that up. There were a couple of dev responses, primarily aimed at people being like, where's Latin as the church language? But I think it's fair to actually use the languages actively spoken in code petitions and whatnot. I think that's a good point by the devs. There were also some input, you know, Iberian isn't really that real of a language. Iranian, obviously not, but they have to group these things. They always have to be grouped. There's no other way around it. All the empty spaces here are related to there being no feudal or clan kingdoms that could have a code language. I hope that you get where I'm coming from when it comes to this feedback. Not the biggest fan. Listen, I think languages are really, really cool. I personally don't believe these mechanics are what I love. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you later. Alligator.